Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and today on the channel we're going to be taking a look at Jumanji: The Curse Returns, a game which blends turn-based combat with elements of deck building, in which you fight back against the curse of Jumanji, attempting to stop its creeping tendrils from enveloping the whole town. This one is a part of the PC game which released last year on Steam, but let's take a looky and see what's what, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more. So story-wise, this one is based off the classic 1995 Jumanji movie, and not the more recent one starring Jack Black and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but it nevertheless involves the same kind of things: a cursed board game, animals, and all that good stuff. The issue here though is that if you've never heard or seen Jumanji, then you likely won't have a clue as to what it's all about, as unfortunately the game makes no effort to drop you a backstory or set the scene for you. You get an intro which reads out the standard Jumanji rule set and has a few still images for you to enjoy, but that's about your lot when it comes to a storyline with this one. The game does however feature a few characters from the original movie, including Peter, Sarah, Judy and Alan, but you also have a couple of random snowboarder characters which I have no idea on the context of, but the long and short of it is there's no storyline, so it really doesn't matter anyway. Oh, and if it's any consolation, Van Pelt also makes an appearance. So when it comes to gameplay, Jumanji is essentially split into two separate gameplay elements. The first being the board game side of things, where you roll a dice, move around the board and trigger different events, and the second is the actual combat sequences, in which 4 players work together to defeat various animals and defend a landmark. To start with though, your first choice is going to be who you want to actually play the game with, and for this you have several different options. You can play it solo with 3 other NPCs, online with up to 3 other players and empty spots filled by NPCs, or alternatively in local co-op, though for some bizarre reason this can only be played with 2 human players and 2 AI, and presumably this is due to how the targeting works in the combat sequences and things getting a little too cluttered and confusing. Anyway, in online mode you can either create or join a room, and rooms come with both a region and a room code, or alternatively you can invite friends directly to your game. In the footage you're watching, I was playing online with Switch Corner, and the issues that we experienced was that firstly the direct invite didn't work, and in order for him to actually join my game I had to change my region setting to America West to match his, so that's just something to bear in mind if you're looking at online multiplayer. Once you've selected your preferred game mode of choice though, you then get to select between 2 different areas, which aside from the visual aesthetics are pretty much identical, with each containing 5 different areas for you to defend. Next it's on to selecting a character from the ones I previously mentioned, as well as your game token for the board, but apart from the visuals there doesn't appear to be any benefit to selecting one character over another. Now, getting into gameplay, the board game mechanics are pretty much standard stuff. You roll the dice, then your piece moves along the spaces towards the centre of the board, with a single player required to reach it in order to achieve victory. Each player takes it in turn to roll the dice, and with each roll an event is triggered detailed as cryptic text in the central sphere, and these can range from combat encounters, which we'll get onto shortly, to players getting sent back to the previous positions on the board, curses which stop them from using magic for a turn, and the appearance of Van Pelt, who plays a part in the combat encounters. And there are also special gem events which allow you to select a passive bonus for your character and provide different benefits during combat. Myself and Alex played 2 full games of Jumanji, and come the end of the second game we'd actually seen every single encounter in the game, which equates to around 7 or 8 different combat encounters, as well as the other bonus events I've mentioned. So there are in fact very few encounters, meaning very little variety, and so plenty of repetition with this one. Now when it comes to the combat encounters, these kind of work a little bit like a card battle game, only the combat is in real time, with all players performing actions as and when they can. You begin the game with a few random cards displayed at the bottom of the screen, each having their own cost to play them, and the bar above them, which continually refills, is what this cost is deducted from. Now each of these combat encounters will task you with defeating a certain number of enemies, and all of the enemies are some kind of animal with the exception of some giant mosquitoes. Sometimes you'll have one main animal to defeat, while other times you'll have multiple smaller ones to take down, but regardless of which of these it is, the rules are still the same. Eradicate the required number of enemies before the time limit at the top of the screen reaches 0, or before all 4 teammates are entirely wrapped up with vines. Each enemy though has a specific number of hit points, and your attack cards highlighted in green deal different amounts of damage to them. There are several different attack cards which include axes, tennis rackets, torches and water pistols, and each enemy has a weakness or resistance against specific cards. The issue here is though that when you first start playing you won't know which it is, so there's a bit of trial and error involved using different cards until you learn this, and then you've just got to try and memorise it. Now, defeating enemies adds bonus seconds to your countdown timer, which believe me on the harder modes is integral to completing some of these encounters, but the enemies also get to attack you back. Each of the enemies has a red meter seen below the green health meter which builds up, and when full they'll then perform their attack. But instead of having your own health meter from which damage is deducted, you instead have a green meter which fills up, with creeping vines slowly wrapping you up. These vines also cause some of your cards to become wrapped and unplayable, with a full green bar leaving you unable to perform any actions at all, but you're able to cut back the vines off yourself and off your own teammates by using attack cards, and so it's essentially a case of alternating between attacking enemies and making sure their vines are kept at bay. Now, with every action you take, the cards in your hand are refreshed, and you do have a bunch of support cards which you can play during combat, and these are highlighted in blue. These range from adding additional seconds to your timer, and a drum card which reduces the enemy's red rage meter, delaying their attack, to magic pots which can be used on teammates or yourself to fill your magic meter, which in turn gives you a high damaging special card when full. Successfully completing encounters rewards you with currency, which can then be used to buy new cards for your deck, including more powerful versions of attack cards and a few new support cards. But again with this, there's not an awful lot of variety to them, and overall we both just found the combat in the game to be relatively simplistic. In general it lacked any real complexity, and every combat encounter was the same thing. Attack with your cards, use drums to stop enemies attacking, and cut back the vines when you can. And while Van Pelt does add a little something extra to the mix, popping up at the side and shooting at random players, even he can be seen off with a couple of special cards, so he doesn't really pose much of a threat. The game does offer 3 different difficulty levels, those being easy, medium and hard, and I will say that despite its simplicity, it's not without its challenge. Admittedly, easy mode is a bit of a cakewalk, with us both succeeding in every single encounter, but medium and hard modes actually take things to the other end of the spectrum, requiring players to be quick on the trigger and really focus down enemies due to them having much more health, and we actually often found ourselves running out of time in these modes, and losing an event means you lose the area and have it wrapped up with vines, and losing all 5 areas means it's game over. Now, overall I have to admit I found the gameplay in this one to be pretty lacklustre. The lack of variety means things get repetitive after the first couple of playthroughs, and there's just really nothing in terms of progression to keep you playing. After completing a run you're given an overall score and rating, but these details aren't saved anywhere and there are no local leaderboards or online leaderboards, so there's really not a reason to keep on playing. Despite there being 2 different levels to select from, the events and enemies you face in them are basically identical, and had there been some distinct differences between the 2, this would have at least added a little bit of replayability, but as it is, 2 or 3 games and I was done. all in all, I have to say a very mediocre gameplay experience with this one. So visually I really didn't mind the graphics in Jumanji. They've gone for a kind of cartoony 3D animated look to the characters and environments, and there's a decent amount of detail to them, and I quite like the look of the animals, but there's nothing that I'd say would really wow you visually. Audio wise, again, nothing special in terms of the audio. We get some animal sounds and sound effects when you play the cards, but music wise there seems to be only a single track which played during the fights, though I will praise the fact that the music becomes more dramatic the closer you get to losing the battle. Overall, pretty average stuff here. So the game performs well on the Switch and there weren't any issues that I noticed when it came to the frame rate. Gameplay issues, not a huge amount to report either, everything plays fine, though I did have a few issues trying to select the correct target during combat, especially in the harder modes where you need to act quickly. Other than this, a few UI issues but nothing major. When all's said and done though, I'm just not entirely sure who the target audience is with this one. The game's difficulty ranges dramatically, with easy mode being far too easy for adults, while I'd say younger players will likely struggle on normal and hard modes. Gameplay is engaging for about 20 minutes while you're learning the ropes, but quickly becomes monotonous, and there's just nothing to keep you coming back for more, both in terms of the enjoyability of the general gameplay mechanics, or in terms of progression or high score chasing. Overall, it's just not really a game that I can recommend, especially considering it takes a decent amount of cooperation on the harder game modes, and local co-op doesn't even feature a 4-player option. And when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Jumanji: The Curse Returns 2 out of 5 stars. If you enjoyed the original movie and could pick this one up on a deep sale, you might want to consider giving it a go, but don't expect too much from it, and I'd recommend playing online. That is of course if you can find anyone else to play with. And so that about does it for this review of Jumanji: The Curse Returns on the Nintendo Switch. Were you a fan of the original movies, and will you be picking this one up and giving it a go? Let me know down in the comments section below, and make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed this review and it helped you out. As always, if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. But for now, I want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.